Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new League of Legends video. In this video, I will be talking to you guys about a champion that I personally feel like is one of the strongest in solo queue. However, before I get into that, there is a very important and quick message I want to tell you guys. Some friends of mine just released a really cool new website where you can draft an LCS team. But the thing with this website is that if you draft a good enough team and you win, you'll actually win prizes, for instance, money. It is free to participate and I will leave a link to the website in the description. But let's get right back into the video. So with the rank reset just a few days away, I really want to bring out this video today to tell you guys a champion that I honestly feel like is just perfect for solo queue. And if you have not guessed yet, that champion is going to be Lissandra. Way back in the days, I used to put her in my top 5 underrated AP mid lane champion list, but lately she has been seeing a lot more love, and I really want to highlight that even more with this video because I truly feel like if you want to go up in the ranks in solo queue, this is definitely a champion you want to pick up, especially if you play mid or top lane. So like my other videos, I'm going to be going through the positives, the negatives of Lissandra. I'll give you guys my build, my runes, and my masteries, and hopefully that's going to be all enough to get you right into the game and ready to play this champion and carry your games. Let's go into the positives of Lissandra, and there's quite a few things to talk about. The first thing is the fact that she brings some of the best CC in the game. CC, if you're unaware, stands for crowd control, which includes stuns, snares, silences, roots, etc. And she has a slow on her Q, she has a snare on her W, and she has a complete lockdown with her ultimate. One thing I've noticed in solo queue is that even if you guys lose the laning phase, but your team fight and your picks overall are just simply superior in terms of CC, the chances of you winning the game as the game progresses and the team fights begin happening just increases more and more. I've lost so many games where almost all of us would win the laning phase, but suddenly the team fights happen and they just have so much more CC than we do that we just cannot do anything and we lose. And Lissandra is one of the best at providing that. Another amazing thing, which kind of goes off of the first point, is that Lissandra is not forced to win the laning phase. When you look at someone like LeBlanc, you almost always want to win the laning phase with her because if you don't, you'll just simply get outscaled and you won't be as useful. But that's not the case for Lissandra because even if you don't do so hot, maybe like a 0, 4, and 2, you are still going to be very useful for your team. Another thing that happens in solo queue quite often is that someone on the enemy team just simply gets fed and they just get to the point where, there's just not a whole lot of things you can do about them. But this is also where Lissandra comes in because if for instance their ADC, maybe the Graves, is just so fed and he's just a really scary person to face, well, Lissandra can go in with her E. Chances are she can get on top of him almost every single time. She can W him, she can ult him, and your team can just focus him down before he can get any damage off. And those right there are the main reasons as to why I love this champion. But the other positives is the fact that her laning phase is not the best, but it's not the worst. If you use her Q properly, your harass is actually quite strong. Ganking her is also not very easy because she has her E, which has one of the best escapes in the game, on top of having her W, which can snare the jungler and or the mid laner. And if they ever try to tower dive you, well, you're instantly going to make them regret that decision the second you use your W and your ultimate either on yourself or on the enemy champion. And speaking of her E, it's one of the best additions to her toolkit because it's exactly what she needs to engage. She can go almost every single wall in Summoner's Rift. She can go right in the middle of the team fight, use her W, and then either use her ultimate on a squishy, for instance the fed Graves, and then use Zhonya's to make herself feel safe, or she can go in and use her ultimate on herself followed by a Zhonya's while your team rushes in for the kills. The cooldown on her spells is quite low. The ultimate and Zhonya's combo, just like I mentioned right now, is extremely overpowered. She definitely has some good burst potential, especially with Deathfire Grasp, while it's still in the game of course. Her ultimate offers options, which is always a good thing. She can either use it on herself or on an enemy champion. And the final thing is that she can be played in almost every role: top, mid, potentially support, and potentially jungle. So those were quite a bit of positives to talk about, but let's go into the negatives. There really isn't a whole lot to talk about here because I truly don't feel like she has a lot of negatives. But let's talk about the ones that she does have. First of all, her spells, of course, do not have the biggest of range, and she has to be somewhat close to the champion to get almost every single thing off, with the one exception being her E ability. Her passive, I do feel like, is one of the weakest in the games, and her Q does take some practice to use properly in the laning phase, and just in general as well. And finally, her E can be also somewhat easily countered whenever escaping, because if you get CC'd, for instance, knocked up, rooted, she won't be able to use the second part of her E ability, and chances are she's gonna die. So those right there are my personal positives and negatives about Lissandra. Clearly you can see that there's so many more positives. Now I'm sure most of you are wondering, what items should you build on this champion? Well, let's go into that next. So if you're playing mid lane, chances are you almost always want to go a Doran's Ring and 2 pots. But if I'm ever playing her top lane, then sometimes I feel like getting a flask and 3 pots is just overall safer. It all depends on the matchup. If you think you'll have trouble, then get a flask. If you think you can be aggressive and do good, then get a Doran's Ring. The very core items on Lissandra that I personally feel like should almost always be bought is the Zhonya's, any type of boots, maybe a Sorcerer, maybe Lucidity, maybe Merc boots, and then you can either get a Morellonomicon or Athenes, and top it off with a Rabadon's. Then taking a look at the other options, you have again the Athenes. Rod of Ages, which is a great item, especially if you're playing her top lane and you want to build more tanky. Another option is a Rylai's. You can get a Leandri's, which is great for her toolkit, but is a bit more on the offensive side. Abyssal is amazing on her because she's going to be very close to the enemy champions a lot of the time, and this item is exactly what this champion needs. And the final thing is just a simple Void Staff, because you almost always want to get a Void Staff as your last item. So I recommend you guys choose between these items I have listed here, but make sure to experiment with the build yourself. Now before this video is done, I'm going to talk about my rune pages and my mastery pages. So I have 2 pages that I run on Lissandra. The first one, which is the one you're looking at now, is a page that I run if I'm facing an AP champion. It's a very standard page with magic pen reds, HP per level yellows, you got the flat MR blues, and then the flat AP quints just to help you out in the laning phase. The second page is quite similar, but I usually run this against AD champions. Now for the yellows instead, I like to run flat HP, but you can swap this out with armor instead. But the main difference are the blue runes, because I no longer need MR if I'm facing an AD champion in the mid lane or the top lane. So I throw in some cooldown reduction, and on top of that I also throw in some ability power per level. The quints remain the same, flat AP. Now for the mastery pages, where I also have 2 pages because it just depends on the matchup. Here's the first page, and the one that I usually tend to run about 70 or 80% of the time. The offensive tree will be the same throughout, but this one runs 9 points in utility because I just like the biscuits, I like the mana regen, and I like the cooldown reduction on my summoner spells. And the second mastery page, I have 9 points in defense tree instead, if you need the extra help in the laning phase. For instance, the damage reduction from champions and the flat HP bonus. I'll leave it to you guys to decide which one you want to use when. Alright guys, that's about it for this video. I hope you have enjoyed it, hope you did learn a thing or two, and maybe got inspired to pick up a champion that you never thought might be good, or you just never thought of picking up in general. With season 5 just around the corner and the ranks being reset, I really recommend trying to pick up this champion. She's just amazing. On top of this, I'm also going to be releasing my top 5 AP mid lane champions tomorrow, all in preparation for the season 5 reset. So I hope these videos help you guys out. I'll be doing my best to try and give you as many tips and points as I can throughout season 5 to hopefully improve your ranks compared to your season 4 ranking, or if you're just simply new. But as usual, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Please check out my other videos as well, throw in a like if you enjoyed it, share it with your friends, and I really hope to see you for the next video. Peace.